what led Nixon to abandon the gold standard in 1971? And although he claimed it was temporary, we've been waiting 40 years. We're still off of it. We ran up huge deficits during the 1960s. We had the guns and butter economy, where the government was both simultaneously fighting a war in Vietnam abroad. In addition, we were funding manned missions to the moon and the whole space program. We were creating more money than we had gold reserves to back it up. And a lot of our foreign creditors saw this and began to demand gold rather than their Federal Reserve notes, because they sensed that Washington simply didn't have enough gold to make its commitment to back the dollar.
See, there's a big difference between earning money and just having the government print it. See, when people are productive, when they have a job and they go to work and their labor is used to increase the supply of goods or services available to the public, right? You have a job, you do work, and your work either aids in the production of a good that people want or need, or you're helping to provide a service that people need. And in exchange for that help, you get money, you earn money, and now you could use that money to help buy the goods and services that you yourself help to produce, right? And the more productive you are, well, the more you earn, and therefore the greater share of what society produces, you are able to enjoy yourself.
In order for the U.S. economy to function, we have to borrow more and more money from the rest of the world. And the more money they loan us today, the more money they have to loan us in the future. And if they ever stop loaning, the whole thing collapses and we can't pay them back. I think you're going to see a very rapid decline in the value of the dollar in a matter of days, whether it's 20%, 30%, 40%. A lot of people have been buying the dollar as a safe haven. You know, when they find out that there's no safety there, in fact, they need a safe haven from the dollar. I mean, right now the dollar is benefiting from the fear trade. Well, what if the fear trade is afraid of the dollar?
But when the government just prints money and gives it to you, right? When you have all these unemployed people who are sitting at home just getting a check from the government, they produced nothing. They added no goods or services to the economy, yet they can consume goods and services in the same proportions as if somebody had actually done work and actually been, a productive member of society. So what does this do? Right? All this does is drive up prices, because if your work adds to the goods and services, and now you're consuming the goods and services you help create, that's fine. But if now you start consuming goods and services, yet you didn't help create any of those goods and services, you just have more money chasing a diminished supply of goods and services, and prices are going to go up. And they're going to go up like never before. And the irony of all of this is that the Federal Reserve has been promising Americans more inflation.
At some point, just like all Ponzi schemes, the participants wake up to the con. They don't want to participate anymore, and the whole thing implodes. Now, when private factors, when people who are voluntarily participating, foreigners, foreign central banks, when they stop buying, the one difference is the Federal Reserve can come and supply the demand for the people who are waking up to the Ponzi nature of what we're doing. But of course, when the Fed becomes the only buyer, that's the end game, or be the beginning of the hyperinflation. This period is going to involve a lot of economic pain. A lot of people who are currently retired in America are going to have to get jobs. Their retirement is gone. It's been bankrupted because they put their faith in a Bernie Madoff type national Ponzi scheme. And of course, a lot of the property is going to decay if people are spending money on the necessities. They don't have money to make the repairs necessary to maintain their properties. If the landlords can't collect rents from their tenants, how are they going to maintain the properties? How are they going to pay the taxes? So I think that the whole economy is going to crumble beneath the weight of this runaway inflation. And of course, the initial reaction by the Fed will be to create even more inflation, to try to stimulate the economy by printing even more money, which of course is the source of the problem.
Well, that's one promise that they're going to deliver on. In fact, they're going to deliver on it beyond their wildest expectations. And contrary to what everybody is saying, inflation is not a good thing. Inflation is not desirable. Higher inflation is not making progress. Right? What people want is a lower cost of living. When prices go down, that's progress. And that's capitalism. That's how capitalism works. When you have real capitalism, businesses become more productive. They become more efficient. They develop economies of scale. And as they do that, the cost of production comes down. And as the cost of production goes down, demand goes up. Because as prices go down, more people can afford to buy more stuff. And it's falling prices that have historically driven a rising standard of living. Well, the government has interrupted that benevolent process through inflation. And a lot of the times, inflation doesn't simply make prices go up. Inflation also prevents prices from going down. And a decline in a price would have been a windfall for the consumer. When the consumer is denied that windfall by government, it's still a tax. The government is still taking your purchasing power because the goods and services that you want to consume are more expensive as a result of the government inflation.
Based on the dollar, because if you want to back your currency, you have to back it with something. You can't back it with nothing. I always think of that old Superman movie where the first one where Lois Lane, she falls off the top of the building and Superman catches her. And he says, I got you. Don't worry, I got you. And she says, well, you got me. Who's got you? Well, that's the dollar. Who's got the dollar? It's not Superman. The dollar can't fly on its own. The dollar used to be backed by gold. It was gold that had the dollar. It's like everybody has tethered their ships to the Titanic of currencies. And so we're all going to go down.
Now, of course, a lot of the inflation that government has been creating since the 2008 financial crisis, a lot of that inflation has temporarily moved into asset price. That's the stock market, the bond market, the real estate market, the market for collectibles or other things that are, in short supply. And so when inflation pushes up asset prices, people don't complain because the people that own those assets, of course, feel much richer. Now, if you don't own those assets, obviously it's problematic if you want to buy it. For example, if housing prices keep going up and you don't own a house and you want to buy one, the fact that prices keep going up, that's not a good thing. Now, the way the government has offset that is by keeping interest rates artificially low so that people can afford to overpay for houses as the prices keep going up.
The world is going to have to extricate itself from this monetary system. Fiat money gives the power to government. Real money keeps the power with the people. Because when you have real money, government is limited. It can only spend what it taxes. And the public will resist taxation. But if the government can simply print and borrow, there's a lot less resistance. And so it's a lot easier for the government to grow when it can promise something for nothing. And so that's what they do. And so gold is what protects the people from the reckless policies of government. Gold is government chaperone. The government wants to be able to do whatever it wants. Gold stands in its way. So yes, gold is an enemy of big government, but it's a friend of freedom. It's a protector of individuals from government.
But again, all of that helps distort the economy and fuel the bubble. But beneath the surface, consumer prices have been rising. For all this talk about deflation, we haven't had any. For all the talk about an inadequate increase in the CPI, consumer prices have been going up, despite the government's best effort to hide that through the CPI. I mean, if you think the CPI is giving you an accurate read on inflation, that'd be like assuming the mafia is going to give you an accurate report on crime. I mean, clearly, if you hired the mafia to study crime, you wouldn't be surprised to find that they said that there wasn't any, and therefore there's no need for more police because there's no crime. The last thing the government wants is for the public to realize how much inflation there is. They certainly don't want bond investors to realize that. The key to sustaining the bubble economy, the key to sustaining massive and unsustainable government deficits in the short run is artificially low interest rates. And the Fed's only justification for keeping interest rates artificially low is the preposterous idea that there's not enough inflation. And therefore, they need to keep rates low in order to make consumer prices higher. But again, it's absurd to believe that consumers want higher prices. If they really did, then stores would advertise price hikes instead of price cuts. They wouldn't make a big deal about having a sale. They would send out notices, hey, hurry up and buy, we just raised our prices. Consumers don't enjoy increased prices. They look forward to decreased prices. So this is all a ruse because the government is trying to justify a reckless monetary policy that is designed to protect the government, not the economy or not the people. But we're about to suffer the consequences of all this inflation.
If governments won't go back on a gold standard, individuals can go back on the gold standard all by themselves. Politicians can create fiat money at will. That's why it's fiat. So why would you want to put your faith in that? Put your trust in politicians and bureaucrats and central bankers when you could just have something real that has intrinsic value, that is scarce, and that is going to remain scarce. It's clearly not the end of the world. I mean, it's probably not even the end of America. For many countries, this is going to be the beginning of an economic boom, a giant burden being lifting off their shoulders, where the world no longer has to loan trillions of dollars to Americans so that we can continue to consume what we don't produce. When this comes to an end, the world will benefit. So it is not something that we should fear. We should embrace it as a world.